Very good evening, everyone. At the first, I would like to thank the organizing team of ICON and Dr. Tushar Patil sir for giving me an opportunity for moderating this session today. Very grand welcome to all the esteemed panelists. Can we start the slides? So early stage lung cancer, all of you will agree, is not really that commonly seen in our practice. Most of the times we get patients in advanced stage, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 4 is, I think, accounting for the bulk of our patients. And early stage patients are generally missed because the symptoms are very non-specific, very mild symptoms. So they don't really get detected at an early stage. So that is why they don't come to us, and they just account for like 30% of the total lung cancer patients that we all see. But we have been pressing for colon or breast, that early stage, that cure word, and the cure thing that which we are looking for. I think that is what we should also look for early stage lung cancer. But what happens is, even though treated adequately with surgery and chemotherapy, SOS radiation, still the recurrence rates are very high. Down the line by 5 years, almost 60-70% recurrence rates as the stage increases. So this is where what is we are looking to reduce. We are looking to reduce the recurrence rates, and that is where the concept of maintenance has come. So is there anything where we can use as maintenance agents, like in early stage also, in which we achieve a recurrence rate that is low, and that is when the cure rates and the overall survivals would improve. So we'll be discussing a case, and according to the case, the questions will be as per the case. And I really request my panelists to keep their answers short and crisp so that we stick to the time duration. So welcome. We have a panel of medical oncologists, surgical and radiation oncologists together. So we had a 67-year-old gentleman who was a non-smoker, presented with mild but a persistent cough. And X-ray was done for this reason because the cough was persistent, which showed a small lesion in the upper lobe. And a CT chest showed a lesion in the left apical lobe. So I'll discuss this case completely and then we'll go for the questions. This was the CT scan. If you can appreciate a nodule in the left apico-posterior region of the left, it was a solid nodule. And the PET CT was also done, which showed an intensely FDG avid soft tissue nodular region. Approximately the size was 3 by 3 centimeters. And without any significant lymphadenopathy or any evident, any metastatic disease elsewhere. So clinico-radiologically, we can see a T2N0 sort of a disease. So the biopsy was attempted. It was a CT guided biopsy, and it was a adenocarcinoma of the lung. So coming to the first question, whenever we have an early stage lung cancer, what are the imaging modalities that you prefer? So I'll specifically ask question to Dr. Satyajit Pawar. Is he there? Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Pratik Patil, what are the imaging investigations you do? We'll leave the X-ray, okay, X-ray and all, whenever a patient comes, it's done. Specifically, I want you to answer why do you want to do a PET CT? See, you have a CT scan, it's showing a lung nodule. You are having features suggestive of this. The patient has already undergone a biopsy. Why was a PET CT done? Why is it necessary in this case? What additional information will you get?
Hello, hi. So one thing PET-CT we like to do in this case in early stage lung cancer, one is to see the metabolic activity of the primary as well as the lymph nodes.
Okay.
To look at the metabolic activity of the lymph nodes. So as in some cases to avoid if it is positive, the sensitivity and specificity is high. So as to avoid the pathological lymph node staging. Okay. And MRI brain, the NCCN guidelines suggest to do it for all the patients who are more than stage 2. Although it could be done only for the symptomatic patients in early stage lung cancer.
Yes, yes. So that's quite perfectly.
Or a CT of MRI is not available, and CT with contrast will suffice.
Exactly. MRI brain, like was the next question. MRI brain, even though the guidelines recommend after stage 2, like stage 2, 3, and 4, commonly, very practically in our practice, I really don't think in a stage 2 patient, if it's not really symptomatic, we would go for an MRI brain unless the symptoms specifically point out. In stage 3 and 4, yes, the guidelines also say ideally as a part of guideline we should be doing, even if the patient, because they may have asymptomatic mets. Regarding PET CT, the importance even in an early stage is there could be sometimes some sites that could be missed on a CT. So we don't want to have any futile thoracotomies. No, so PET CT in many trials has specifically shown to reduce futile thoracotomies. That is why it is indicated. And plus it will show us the nodal status. The nodal status is what is very importantly will be judged by the PET CT with the activity. And there are many false positive, false negatives, but it will help us in the nodal decisions. So Dr. Ashwin, like what are the tissue sampling techniques? What are the ways in which you can get a tissue? Let's say in an early stage, what will be the various ways in which you get a tissue sample?
So definitely we require a biopsy, two-cut
Yeah,
biopsy, and
okay.
then a mediastinal sampling.
Mhm.
So for that, mediastinoscopy or EBUS guided
Okay.
FNAC or biopsy will be required.
Yes, and for a peripheral nodule, it will be a CT guided.
CT.
So the various ways, if there are central masses, generally it's a bronchoscopy guided, and it's a peripheral, it is a CT guided. So this is for a early stage. In advanced stage, we have many other options. We have a supraclavicular node biopsy, a pleural sample. You can have a metastatic site biopsy. So this was for early stage that we, how I'm sure many of you must have faced even in your routine practice, getting a tissue sample sometimes gets really difficult. So we don't have a radiologist in our panel, but otherwise we would have discussed that also. Okay, getting a tissue sample sometimes it's pretty difficult in early stage lung cancer. And lab tests, I would not go in much in detail, but the importance of calcium is there in patient of bony mets in advanced disease. The alkaline phosphatase and liver function test, if deranged, they may indicate pointers to a metastatic disease at that point. Dr. Shirsagar, the question for you, what is this mediastinal staging? Why is it that important? And what are the various methods that that the way in which we do it?
Yeah, mediastinal staging is very important in deciding the whether surgery can be your first option or not. Because if a single node is there, a mediastinal node single, then we can go ahead with the surgery. But just to know whether there is a multi-centric N2 nodes are there, and if there are bulky nodes are there more than 2 centimeters. So these things, if there is a bulky node more than 2 centimeter or multicentric N2 involvement, the results are poor. They are poor surgical candidates. That's why to consider first as a surgery or for a chemoradiation, it is very important. And for that, mediastinoscopy is a gold standard we are doing. And obviously, EBUS commonly we are doing nowadays because of the daycare procedure, easy, then the sensitivity is more. So obviously, mediastinoscopy or EBUS, these are the two methods by which we can endoscopic bronchial ultrasonography, FNAC, we can do for staging the mediastinum. Yes.
So I think EBUS, TNA and EUS, there are different stations which you can access. If you can combine EUS with an EBUS, even the posterior and inferior stations can be, you can access them. And mediastinoscopy, like you said, it is invasive. I think these, but of course it's not available everywhere. So every centers may not be having an EBUS TNA. So when do you do this mediastinal? So do you do it during surgery, pre-op? When is it supposed to be done?
It's better to do before surgery to avoid any surprises during the surgery.
Yes,
Yes,
it is better to do it
yes,
before
always,
surgery.
always before the surgery. Yes.
Because an N2 disease, definitely if you can detect N2 and 3, then it
Yes.
will avoid a futile surgery. So this was, the groups we have always learned in early stage lung cancer. These are the 4 groups. The group A in which there is an obvious mediastinal infiltration. See, no need of a biopsy over here. Group D, there is a very peripheral small tumor. There is a very low chance of nodal involvement. So if you leave apart the A and D, the B and C groups, in which there are enlarged discrete mediastinal nodes and clinical stage 2 or central stage 1, this is where the mediastinal staging really matters. Because if you can detect the disease to be having N2 or N3 pre-op, then this patient can directly go for CTRT and a surgery can be avoided in such cases. So this is the standard NCCN guidelines, which you all can see in stage 1A. They have written, even in that stage 1A also the workup does include PET CT and a mediastinal sampling. As also we go down, it will include an FDG PET brain MRI, and then according to the nodal status, we proceed ahead. So this patient went ahead with an AUS, like we know, because in the PET CT also there were no nodes, no enlarged nodes were seen, and the patient was fit, so he underwent surgery. The various surgical techniques can be a sublobar resection, lobectomy, pneumonectomy. sleeve resections. These are the various surgical procedures that are done along with a mediastinal node dissection. So this patient had a tumor size which was approximately 2.9 by 2.5 by 2 centimeters. It was an invasive adenocarcinoma acinar component, moderately differentiated. It invaded the visceral pleura. And plus the pathological staging was PT2N1 because the station 10 and 11 nodes were involved. So the classification was T2N1. So it was a stage 2 tumor. So my next question is to Dr. Nikhil Shirsi. Like we all know, in advanced tumors and all, of course, we have been going ahead with the biomarker testing. So do you really do a biomarker testing in your early stage tumor? And if you do, whether you would want to do it on the biopsy sample or on the surgical tissue, and which markers do you want to do?
Yeah, I would like to do molecular testing in patient, even though it's in early stage lung cancer, because now scenario has changed. Now we are offering patients in adjuvant treatment, and in that case, depending on the biomarker and which is positive, we can change the treatment. Second thing, I would like to do in post-surgery tissue because tissue sampling is more. Which biomarker? The EGFR is the preferably the EGFR, but I would like to do all markers using NGS base because broad base. Maybe because many patients they develop metastatic disease and I don't want to work up it again. So if possible, I will go for all markers.
Yes, perfect, perfect. So now, it is the time that we need to think about doing markers even in your early stage. We are all very, very used to doing it in advanced stage and metastatic setting, but it is now the time for change. You need to check these biomarkers even in early stage, because now if you all have heard any word about the Alchemist trials, the recruitment has, I think, recently closed, but they are including patients who are they are operated, who have completed the adjuvant treatment, and they are having 3 separate recruitments. One is for the EGFR, one is for ALK, and one is for PDL1. So they are the ones who are testing maintenance therapies. So these trials are ongoing, and we are, as and when we are having results, we're definitely getting PFS benefits out of all these trials. So please do encourage biomarker testing in your patients of early stage lung cancer. And as and when we gain data on this will also become the standard of care. So Dr. Shirsagar, what are the problems that you see, when these patients of early lung cancer, some of them are eligible, they are radiologically such, they are eligible for surgery, but what are the possible reasons that many of them actually don't undergo resection?
Yes, very good question actually, because see, we have to consider the patient factors. In that, the patient factor, we consider what is the performance status of the patient. So the performance status should be good to do this major surgery. Then there should not be any comorbidities, major comorbidity like COPD, then heart element or neurological element that can be there. The patient doesn't fit to undergo such surgeries because of these comorbidities. And third thing is pulmonary function test. So we do definitive pulmonary function test, FEV1, then DLCO. In that also some patients are borderline in doing these tests. So after fitting all these, only 26% of this patient, I'm talking about 3A also, they only undergo surgery. 76% still don't fit in that category. So all these factors combining, we decide these are the patient factors. And then resectability part, if I say that you should, it's not a resectability, I can say whether you are want to go for surgery or not. That is the question. So as I discussed previously, if N1, I am okay with it, but N2 disease, which is multi-station N2 disease, bulky N2 disease, then the primary involving the nodal disease. In such case, getting negative resection margins is very difficult. You require a very experienced team. Then again in T3, it's okay for till pleura, till pericardium. But when it comes to the T4 disease, where the esophagus is involved, then the trachea is involved, then the major vessels are involved. So that case, there a question comes about the R0 resection. That's why considering all these patients and surgery related factors, I think again N2 multi-station bulky disease, T4 disease and compliance not fitting, patient is not fit performance wise, pulmonary function wise or comorbidities, all these mix, we can combine to say that 76% of the patients doesn't undergo surgery, still they are in early stage.
Okay, so that's a big figure, sir. I think so in spite of being operable, 76% not undergoing, I think so many factors need to be considered before you think of surgery. So Dr. Neeraj, radiation oncologist, what about the role of radiotherapy? So two specific questions for you. If you have a patient of surgery operated, resected non-small cell, what is the role of port? In what patients are you consider the exact indication of port in such patients?
So for T1, T2, N0 or even N1 disease, if the margins are adequately excised and there are the limited number of N1 station nodes, then currently the guidelines don't suggest any role of post-op radiotherapy in such patients who have been adequately, and adjuvant chemotherapy has a role. For your second question regarding role of SBRT in early stage NSCLC, then as many factors have been elucidated by Dr. Shirsagar, many patients are medically comorbid and or do not have an adequate pulmonary function or reserve, or they can opt out of surgery even after they are perfectly fit. So in those cases, depending upon the site of the tumor within the lung, whether it's peripheral or central, we can go for stereotactic radiotherapy. And we have a lot of motion management techniques which aid us in doing that. So for SBRT for T1, T2, N0, we can definitely go for all the patients who are not fit for surgery or who opt out of the surgeries.
And Neeraj, what about those patients who pathologically later turn out to be N2 disease? So what do you think? In N2 disease, should radiation be offered?
For N2 disease, if it's offered, if you are saying that we have not done an adequate workup and patient later turns out to be N2, then it's, I don't know what to say, but for patients, like we have done an adequate workup like a PET scan beforehand, or we have done a mediastinoscopy.
Yeah. Let's say in spite of all this, they turn out to be N2 pathologically.
So if
Would you
we
still-
have, so are you implying that we have already irradiated the primary and now the
No,
patient
no,
is
the
N2?
patient has turned out to be N2 post-op.
For
disease.
N2 post-op, yes, for post-op N2, there
Yes,
is
it is
definitely
better.
an
Yes,
indication for
definitely.
it.
There has been some data which have shown definite benefit,
Yes.
but all the question is about sequencing. So whether you would want to go for chemotherapy first or radiotherapy first.
I would say it will depend on the patient's performance status. If the patient can tolerate, I would suggest that patient take CTRT followed by adjuvant. If the patient is not very fit after surgery, then we can go for a sequential chemo followed by
Okay, so
radiation.
most
is
of the
okay.
times, like you said, the patient's performance status post-op in a big thoracic surgery is not really very good. So we prefer to give chemotherapy first,
Followed.
followed by radiation, because otherwise then the chemo cycles may get compromised. So that which is what we don't want.
Yes.
So the radiation is generally planned, and concurrent is difficult to tolerate, like you rightly said. In R2 resections, they have said concurrent is a better role, but it's a really difficult therapy to tolerate post-op. So many times the sequential is what happens practically in our case scenarios. So this was just a theory that we just discussed. Mediastinal nodes involved not. If yes, we have to check if it is N2 or N3. The direct options are CTRT, except a very small subset which may go for surgery. And if the mediastinal nodes are not involved, then the treatment is surgery and adjuvant chemotherapy. And the maintenance osimertinib we'll be discussing eventually. And like you said, use of port, we have already discussed this, multi-station disease, subcarinal involvement, extracapsular nodal disease. So in these cases, also in N2 disease, we should be considering a port. So what about the role of NACT? Is Dr. Asma attending? She was on the panel. So, okay, Dr. Pratik, have you ever, what about the role of NACT? Is there any role, NACT, in this early stage lung cancer?
So for early stage non-small cell lung cancer, most of the therapy, neoadjuvant has been replaced by adjuvant therapy. Although there are some experts that advise giving neoadjuvant therapy, especially in the cases, suppose it is upfront N2 nodal disease, or a patient is not fit for concurrent CTRT, the radiation dosimetrics do not match, or a patient who is not upfront resectable. So in those patients, we can definitely do a neoadjuvant therapy followed by the response.
Okay. So the data is not really very robust for NACT. We don't really have that good data that has shown benefit in the NACT setting. There is a very specific subset, if like stage 3A disease, in which there is a single station N2. We know that the disease is resectable. It's a young patient. It can be downstaged by chemotherapy. Only in such cases, a very, very specific indication for NACT. Otherwise, NACT is something which we really, as medical oncologists, don't really advise in early stage lung cancer. So this patient, like we know, was a stage 2 adenocarcinoma. Post-surgery, the molecular panel report was a EGFR positive mutation. So what should be the next approach? Dr. Ashwin, what about the role of adjuvant chemotherapy in this patient? It's a stage 2 disease. So what
So
about the adjuvant chemotherapy?
So adjuvant chemotherapy is definitely recommended,
Yes.
in which pemetrexed and cisplatin-based chemotherapy
Yeah.
cycled every 3 weeks, 4 cycles we give,
Okay.
followed by, as EGFR is positive, osimertinib as a
Main thing.
adjuvant treatment.
Okay, so the benefit of adjuvant chemotherapy has been proven stage 2 onwards. It is offering a survival benefit of 4% as well as decrease in the recurrence-free survival. And the drug regimens which are chosen are cisplatin based. It is based on the LACE metanib. There were many trials, Anita trial, JBR trial. So all of they proved there is a there is a benefit of platinum doublet. So cisplatin was the drug which was preferred. Carboplatin to be used only in those patients in which there is a contraindication to cisplatin, because cisplatin was proven to be superior to this. So there is stage 1B onwards. In stage 1B, we need to see risk factors like a poorly differentiated vascular invasion, LVI, unknown nodal status. So all these factors, if they are present in 1B, then only the chemotherapy is indicated. But stage 2 onwards, definitely the chemotherapy has, adjuvant chemotherapy, platinum based definitely has a role. So these are the various regimens, NCCN guidelines, which show cisplatin, pemetrexed in a non-squamous, and in squamous cisplatin with gemcitabine or docetaxel. These are the ones which are preferred, and it is cisplatin and not carboplatin, which is the preferred agent in neoadjuvant adjuvant setting. And these are the concurrent chemoradiation regimens. So this was the LACE meta-analysis. It analyzed 5 trials, the BLT, ALPI, IALT trial, JBR trial, and the ANITA trial. And the maximum number of patients were in stage 2 and stage 1 and 2. And in this, the adjuvant chemotherapy was given, and we can clearly see the benefit. You know, the chemotherapy had benefit rate, and by it had a 5% survival advantage. So chemotherapy should definitely be advised, no doubt about it. Adjuvant chemotherapy definitely indicated in these patients. Now, Dr. Nikhil, what about the role of adjuvant? What about this ODORA trial? Have you heard about it? Are you practicing it? What is the benefit of giving? Now, does this patient has EGFR positive? Will you consider adjuvant osimertinib? What is the benefit?
Yes, definitely. Because previously osimertinib was we used for a metastatic setting, and it has shown clear benefit in PFS as well as OS. And this in adjuvant setting, in that is ADAURA trial, it has shown when osimertinib is used in patient with early stage lung cancer post surgery and post chemotherapy, it has definitely showed there is a significant and very prolonged DFS benefits. And OS data was not mature, and based on this, I'll prefer to give osimertinib.
Definitely. So ADAURA trial published last year, the data, PFS data, which we saw last year, very, very excellent results. Impressive results, I'll say, cannot be ignored, has been showing a very good PFS benefit. So we'll see about this. ADAURA trial had 600 patients, and 300 and 300 in both the arms. They were operated patients, stage 1, 2, and 3, out of which stage 2 and 3A patients were maximum. They accounted for 70%. And these were patients of R0 resections, and they had, some of the patients had completed adjuvant chemotherapy, some had not, and they were all EGFR positive at the diagnosis, and maximum number of patients were non-smokers. So this was the baseline characteristics of this trial, and osimertinib was prescribed in them at a dose of 80 milligram. And what we found at the end of 2 years was that it improves DFS versus placebo. The separation of curves is very well evident. The HR for this is 0.20 in the overall population, which includes stage 1B, and the HR in stage 2 and 3A is also 0.17. The PFS in osimertinib arm not reached versus 19, and in this not reached versus 27 months. So I think a pretty impressive data, which we really need to look upon and cannot be ignored. A very good PFS benefit, which has been offered by this osimertinib. Now, not only osimertinib, gefitinib, erlotinib have also been used. So we have the RADIANT trial, in which also you can see the PFS benefit in the upper one. We also had the CETONG trial, which used gefitinib, and the ADAURA trial. All of these trials are definitely showing a PFS benefit when EGFR TKI are being tried in the maintenance setting in the early stage lung cancer. It is this trial in which an overall survival actually could not be proven with gefitinib, but like we all know, ADAURA data is still awaited. So we'll be looking forward to what data it brings, but the DFS benefit is definitely very evident. And what we can see is 11% of patients in osimertinib had DFS events compared to 46% in the placebo arm. If you see the plot below, we can also see that the recurrences in osimertinib arm were very, very less. It included the loco-regional as well as distant as well as CNS. So all the recurrences were very less in the osimertinib arm. So majority of the patients with recurrence had loco-regional recurrence only, with only 38% having metastatic compared with 61% as compared to the placebo arm. So metastatic recurrence or a CNS recurrence definitely has a poor prognosis. So compared to the other arm, the osimertinib arm had very less recurrences. And even though the recurrences were there, they were in the localized. So local regional recurrence associated with longer recurrence-free survival than a distant recurrence. The CNS is a common site of distant recurrence among EGFR positive non-small cell. In the RADIANT study, 37% of recurrences in patients in EGFR were with erlotinib had CNS involvement. So why osimertinib is better than erlo or JEF is because the CNS recurrences are even less. We all know that once a patient has CNS mets, the prognosis becomes really poor. So osimertinib benefited in that also. The CNS recurrences were even less in the osimertinib as compared to gefitinib and erlo. And osimertinib as such has also been a very potent drug. We have evidence from our advanced cases. So has been shown to have clinically significant exposure in the brain as compared to EGFR TKI. So is ADAURA practice changing? Definitely, yes. We would like to incorporate this in our practice. We would like to offer osimertinib maintenance to our patients who are EGFR positive. It has been included in the NCCN guidelines, like we all can see in stage 1B, 2, and 3. Chemotherapy for those patients who have completed chemotherapy or not. In those patients with EGFR positive, we can definitely offer osimertinib maintenance in these patients. So thank you all the panelists for your time.